John, we've seen some terrific action this year in the King of the Hunter Dirt Track Series, both at Cameron Park and at Raymond Terrace Barley Ranch.
That's certainly a promoter's dream, if you like, that still the series is open with the final round to go.
Yes, John, it's been terrific, and it's going to be a terrific promotion for the final. None of the series, or none of the classes yet are straightforward. They're all hinging on the last round on Sunday.
And the big boys, where it's still not decided, I believe, are competing for the big prize at the end of the day.
Yes, John, the prize for the senior solo on Sunday is some trophies very generously donated by FS&B Scorer, their bullion dealers in Newcastle. The first time ever that they've been involved in motorcycle sport in the Newcastle area.
And who are the boys involved in fighting out for these?
Well, the top four boys are Chris Watson, Graham Baldwin, John Foreman and Paul Catholic.
I guess this is a sign that the sport is growing in strength.
John, this year in the Newcastle area especially, it's really gone ahead in leaps and bounds, both as far as riders and things like that are concerned. It's terrific.
If you're about to toss up which is the best value game for your dollar, only one game can pay out $1 million for just $1 entry.
In this city alone, residents part company with around $478,000 on an average week in the hope that luck will shine on them and Lotto's so-called big one will drop their way. In the soft gambling market, which includes the lotteries, the pools and the instant lotteries, Lotto is by far number one, capturing 76% of the market. In fact, Lotto is the most purchased consumer product in New South Wales. So far this year, Novocastrians have spent a massive $19.5 million on Lotto. And if you're one of those people who are wondering where their money has gone, don't despair, because Novocastrians have won back $22.5 million from the game. But it seems some areas in Newcastle are luckier than others. In a report that notes winnings in 32 areas in Newcastle since the beginning of the year, residents of Edgeworth Cardiff topped the list with combined winnings of more than $2.5 million. Next in line are Woodbury and Beresfield with winnings of just under the $2 million mark, and then third is Adamstown. But what's most interesting about the figures is the fact that there is no correlation between an area's population and its winnings. Raymond Terrace, for instance, with a population of only 11,500, has won nearly $500,000 more than Charlestown with a population of over 26,000. And then if you go right down the list to number 20 and Maitland with a population of more than 31,000, winnings are just over $300,000, or only 1/9 of the winnings in Edgeworth Cardiff. So what does all this say about Novocastrians and Lotto? Well, maybe it's worth moving house to Edgeworth. To date, 4 Newcastle people have won prizes of $1 million or more. But if that's not enough, consider Lotto's 5th birthday draw in early November. If you're the lucky one, you'll win the largest cash prize ever offered in Australia, $5 million.
$1 million? Too big to forget.
plant operators, members of the FEDFA, moved back onto the Glenbourne site this week, it seemed the long-running dispute might be near an end. However, the remaining unions involved have opted to stay out until all are granted similar conditions. In a joint statement, the striking unions say that over-award payments have now been offered to metal tradesmen, covered by the AMFSU, but denied to building workers and members of the Australian Workers' Union. The unions say they reject what they describe as an inequitable situation and will stay out until the contractor, Citra Constructions, extends its offer to cover all unions involved.
The bypass will reduce the heavy traffic and lessen the noise and pollution caused by the constant flow of cars and trucks in High Street. Alderman Guy says the situation is becoming intolerable, and he's convinced High Street would attract more retailers and shoppers if it weren't so busy.
Well, there was a meeting yesterday with representatives of the Department of Main Roads, and they did in the manner of presentation of councils led us to believe that there was doubts of whether it would be going ahead or they may be dropping some of the stages of the development.
After consultation with the Commissioner for Main Roads, Mr Bruce Loader, the member for Maitland, Mr Alan Walsh, is convinced the bypass will go ahead as planned and will meet its deadline in 1987.
The bypass, regardless of the review, is continuing. Stage 2 and 3 tenders should be called January, February next year. So there's no problem with bypass.
The letting of contracts for the project has been postponed at least 5 months, and Alderman Guy says that development is making all the more disturbing in future.
I have the responsibility of this city, and this road is so urgent for the survival of the city that we'll be following the matter to make certain that those assurances are kept forward, and if we see any delay, we'll be most certainly coming back to Mr Walsh and the Minister on the matter.
Some of these bugs here, they sure take some getting off along the... Certainly took a bit of a pretty fair run and it gets through the dirt in their bit of a trick.
At least this side of the windscreen will be clean and muddy.
Very economical.
Yeah. I think you're going to get...
I know where to do it.
The tournament has attracted a large field of top Newcastle, Australian and overseas players. In fact, out of the 60 players taking part in the tournament, 15 come from overseas, with several from Sweden, the United States, New Zealand and even Czechoslovakia taking part. Most interest in the tournament, however, lies in the performance by former top Australian player Diane Barlestrud-Bromholt, who played her first match on Wednesday. After several years in the top bracket of Australian players, she dropped off the scene 18 months ago because of injury. The tournament is the first step in Bromholt's comeback to the women's professional circuit, and all eyes will be on her to see if she can recover the form that saw her climb to number 4 in the world back in 1979. The field also includes a number of players from the Australian Institute of Sport, as well as many young Newcastle players. The top 4 players from the 2-day qualifying round go into the tournament proper, which begins on Wednesday.
Proves this isn't the case. CES has found that specialised follow-up is necessary to marry applicants with jobs.
Frequently,
although there are jobs available, they don't meet the qualifications that the particular people that happen to be registered meet. So we have a number of schemes, as we've discussed earlier, that address the issue of trying to bring about a level of skill in the existing pool of unemployed to meet the demands of employers now and into the future.
And is one of the roles then of the task force to alert employers to the fact that these courses are functioning, that people are actually going through them?
Yes, that's one of the tasks of the task force. They operate on a number of levels. Now, obviously, if there happen to be vacancies available now, they'll be bringing those vacancies in and trying to match up and get suitable people for them.
It's interesting to note that an increase in development application inquiries has occurred. All this aside, it should be remembered that whether the application satisfies the coding requirements or not, the final decision rests with the administrator. Mr. Norm Strait from the Master Builders Association says that although the indications are pleasing, he intends to reserve his judgment on the merits of having a council administrator for at least 12 months. He's hoping Mr. Saunders will speed up the process. President of the Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Peter Evans.
Well, clearly the administrator has demonstrated that he can rubber stamp things very quickly, and he's obviously doing that on the advices of his officers, and that's saving council meetings and so on. It may be that a number of developers who have had things in the pipeline have now seen an opportunity to get them processed quickly, and that's the way they're going.
So although the sacking of the Newcastle City Council was politically unpalatable to many, it could have one positive effect, and that's a much-needed boost to the city's building industry. Depend on the budget and the administrator. Dean Lawrence believes the tripartite approval is important and should be maintained.
I believe the cathedral is in a significantly different area, that it is for Newcastle perhaps the most prominent historic and heritage building, and we're not asking money to light the building inside during the times of services. We're simply asking for some consideration that this very beautiful building, which is an inspiration to great numbers of people across denominational and faith levels, might be able to continue to be lit at night.
Serious players, seems worried that Steve City side are
A dozen coal ships are now lying at anchor off Newcastle, waiting to load cargoes to Japan, Europe and the Middle East. If they were all to take on coal as scheduled, loading would have to run at the rate of 3.5 million tonnes a month, almost double the normal rate of 2 million tonnes. In theory, now the giant Kooragang coal loader is operational, the port should be able to meet such a surge in demand, which appears to be seasonal, in line with the northern winter. However, the system is not running smoothly. Kooragang is still commissioning parts of the stockpile facility, so that at present it can handle, at best, only 2 ships a week. Meanwhile, at the main Port Waratah loader, a go-slow by members of the TWU in dispute over a disciplinary action is limiting coal loading. If that wasn't enough, the SRA is having a coal exporters, these problems couldn't come at a worse time. Most mine operators are in Japan for the annual Japan-Australia coal conference and are fighting to prevent the United States becoming a bigger share of Japan's coal needs.
Okay, let's go home.
As in previous years, the Superman race conducted by Swansea Belmont Surf Lifesaving Club is over a demanding course. Starting at the Belmont 16-foot sailing club with a 1 kilometre swim across the bay, a 4 kilometre run follows the Swansea Channel,
Superman race
a 2 kilometre ski
onto
paddle,
the road.
yet another
Second
2
stage
kilometre
was
leg,
the work.
this time on a board,
A fresh
and finally
nor'easter
a finishing
sweeping down the
100-metre
channel to
sprint
paddle
up
out
Black
around the
Street.
breakwater and
Swansea
into the
Belmont
open.
Surf
No need
Lifesaving
to worry
Club
about
Terry
other
Watt
competitors.
says these sorts of Ironman events are
His
becoming
time for the
increasingly
race was
popular.
56 minutes.
Early indications are that not only will we have the top Newcastle surfers entered, but likelihood of people from Sydney and the Central Coast, including such people as Chris Bond, who has just recently won the 1984 Pie Ski Marathon from Foster to Sydney.
Well, of course, last year's event was very successful, and I believe the winner there, Brad Fernley, is going to return. He sees it as a worthwhile event.
Most certainly. Brad is treating this as a lead-up to his entry into the Coolangatta Gold this year, or I beg your pardon, early next year. Brad finished in a very high placing in that event last year and is determined to do better this year, and he is leading up to it as part of this event.
Well, it doesn't give much of a chance for the lesser fit blokes to perhaps get a place. Do you see this also as a fun event?
I certainly do. We have a category, a section within the event for the over 35s. Our oldest competitor last year was in the vicinity of 47 to 48 years of age. And most people do treat it as a sporting event, a fitness event, and it's open to anyone that wishes to enter.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. A few weeks ago, I had the privilege of speaking to around 200 economics students in Newcastle, and we had a ball, if I can express it in those terms. I chatted to them for about an hour about common sense money management, and just to remind everyone, it's my fondest dream to see common sense money management as a compulsory segment in the school curriculums of Australia. But last week, as you'll recall, I was talking about the right way to borrow money, e.g. to buy a car, and of course many of the questions I was asked at that particular talk, I don't give seminars or lectures, I give talks, involved how does one, for example, establish a credit rating. Well, firstly, I think the easiest way for the majority of people is to go in and apply for, say, a bank card. Now, the amount that you might be offered by way of credit might only be $500, but let's crawl before we walk. Establishing a credit rating and maintaining a good credit rating is absolutely essential, and you can start, say, from around the age of 18. Now, there is a very, very important point to note about bank card, and a lot of people tend to go from one extreme to the other. Firstly, if you're a compulsive spender, don't take out a bank card, and if you've got one, cut it up into little bits and, put it where you know it should be put. But if you can use bank card correctly and you buy and settle for what you buy, and I'm stressing the word buy, within that 55-day period, you pay no interest whatsoever. Now, some people are clever, or so they think they're clever, and they have two bank cards, and they borrow cash from one bank card to pay what's owing on the other bank card, without realising, of course, that when you borrow cash, you are being charged interest at the rate of 1.5% per month, and that works out at more than 18% over a 12-month period. But going back to bank card, a great way to start a credit rating, and think about it very, very seriously. I'll see you next Monday.